liberation, and thriving are desirable concepts that are abstract and concrete, personal and communal. Today's orators will offer their unique approaches to the competition's theme. We would like to begin by thanking Reverend Timothy A. Williams, class of 1987, Assistant Dean of Campus Ministry in the the Martin Luther King Jr. International Chapel. And I'd like to acknowledge this year's timekeepers and judges. Timekeepers and judges, once you're introduced, will you please remain standing? Mr. Omar J. Colbreth Jr., class of 26, Africana Studies major. Mr. Chase A. W. Cunningham, class of 28, Economics major. Chair and Professor, Department of English, and I'm the convener of judges. In absentia, we'd like to acknowledge Dr. Leah J. Bouquet, Professor of English, convener of judges, and co-convener of the competition. The competitors will be judged on the following criteria: command of topic, articulation of ideas, presence during delivery, completion of speech within the time allotted. The judges will view the competitors' speeches independently and collectively and assess each competitor according to the criteria. The timekeepers will record and present each time and note any infractions. They will deliver the official results to the judges. The judges will deliberate on their findings and deliver them to the members of the oratorical committee for verification. The competition's final results will be announced next week during Crown Forum and presidential inauguration. Thank you everyone for your presence. Best wishes to the competitors. The competition shall begin.
The title of my speech is True Freedom is the Free Self. Which is stronger, chains of metal or chains on the mind? In these tumultuous times where our rights and safety are treated as commodities, we must be self-determining and forgiving. True liberation is the ability to be whatever we imagine to and to release the burden of trauma. The path forward looks like the black kid becoming a physicist when the world only applauds him for being an athlete, or the black writer staying true to his craft in favor of a safer life. We must be self-authorizing and define ourselves aside from these oppressive institutions while using forgiveness to unburden our souls from the trauma of our racial past. The first steps to black liberation must be taken by us. Now, more than ever, these institutions are working their hardest to imprison us. ICE, MAGA, and Proud Boys assault our bodies and minds with terror. But chains of metal rust. But chains on the mind last a lifetime. We must self-authorize ourselves by sharpening our will and determining our faith. Our future is rooted in aiming high, and Morehouse is a place where Black men can be anything and thrive to think anything. We are proof not to allow what is before you to define what is beyond you, and that the only compass you need is God's will and your faith. In her speech, The Danger of the Single Story, by novelist Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie, she says, culture is not a people. People are culture. I believe in the danger of the single self, where in conforming yourself, we rob the world of new possibilities for our culture. The chains of white America confine our success to athletes and entertainers. We must self-authorize ourselves to manifest true and unapologetically. This idea of linked fate, that when one of us shows up truly, it opens up what's possible for all of us. So be the paradox. Be the scientist, philosopher, or writer, businessman. Let the only chains you have be to your dreams. Upon becoming self-determining, we must authorize ourselves to be forgiven. The second aspect of the Black prison is the rightful contempt that surrounds centuries of belittlement and abuse of the Black struggle. Our future as a liberated people requires forgiveness. Dr. King's civil rights movement preached nonviolence and forgiveness. But this notion was not the absence of might. Forgiveness is not making allowance or forgoing accountability. It is the strategic shedding of weight to allow us to be the people of the future. Like the flying Africans of myth, abandoning bondage to fly to the motherland, we have always been the standard for change. And as we liberate our souls and minds, we will become the people of the future. Together, we stand on the edge of change. And this moment will not wait. Do not conform. Be forgiving. And ask yourself, before the world decides for you, are you free?
Good morning. Good morning, brothers. My name is Pierce Alexander Nagers, a senior communication studies major with a double minor in political science and religion from Evanston, Illinois. And the title of my speech today is Finding Liberation in a Fractured Society. Between the 1950s and early 70s, many white citizens left American cities for suburban living. Modern-day highways were created so that white citizens could commute to their jobs in the city. During the creation of highways across many US cities, officials and planners decided it was best to cut through Black neighborhoods. Black liberation and evolution continue to be under threat in a world where whiteness has so long been deemed as the standard. I use the highway constructions gutting our neighborhoods as an example, but throughout history and in modern day, Black people continue to be under attack in our journey to see liberation. To see our communities thrive with Black liberation, we must start with embracing our Blackness. We all come from different backgrounds, cultures, skin complexions, and upbringings, yet many feel a sense of shame about their Blackness or try to fit into the white Western standards. Throughout history, beauty standards have preferred lighter skin, while darker skin has been viewed as less desirable. We have also seen in society how people outside of our race are in a state of shock if they hear a Black person speak what they describe as elegant, as if they were expecting us to be illiterate or sound like something other than a human being. Western society has become so normalized that we sometimes fail to notice the ignorance and hypocrisy in how we have been treated. We do ourselves a disservice by continuing to live our lives trying to fit into the Western white European society. Stepping away from the Western societal lens that has had us in a chokehold for far too long is a step in seeing Black liberation and seeing us thrive. As Black men, we have far too long been ostracized by society. It is nothing new with the treatment of Black men, from lynchings to police brutality. However, it is crucial that we as Black men do better with our treatment of Black women and advocate for Black women's rights. Under this modern day dictatorship we are seeing in the United States, Black women are under the most attack. Last year, an article by MSNBC reported that nearly 300,000 Black women had exited the American labor force from February to April of 2025. This number is a disgrace, as these Black women are more than qualified for their jobs. We need to advocate and fight for our Black women. We also need to do a better job in our treatment of the Black LGBTQIA+ community. Too many times, we have Black voices within the LGBTQIA+ community who are being put down. Black liberation cannot exist if we exclude members of our own community. Change starts within, and how we treat one another shapes the future for generations. To see our community truly liberated, we need to change the way we treat each other. Black liberation and thriving can exist in the 21st century. My mother once told me, Pierce, in order to see change, you need to be change. The most significant movements throughout history, such as the Civil Rights Movement and the Haitian Revolution, began with individuals changing their thinking, attitudes, and lifestyles. How we change as individuals will affect and influence others around us. Black liberation will be present. We can already see its impact on future generations. I hope one day I will get to see my future children and their children live their beautiful lives with joy and laughter, embracing all of their Blackness, free from the fractured societal structures currently in place. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning. My name is Trayvon Henderson, and I am a senior sociology major from Cleveland, Ohio. While contemplating what thriving and liberation looks like for Black people in the 21st century, I could not help but think about Uncle Jimmy's line from his book, Nobody Knows My Name, that says, "Most people can delude themselves and get through lives quite happily, but I still believe that the unexamined life is not worth living." As we have been born into this capitalistic society that militarizes infants and makes slaves out of men, can our veil be removed from recognizing our actual liberation? The trend of hatred has outlasted its newness, and at this very moment, it has chained its contributors in delusion. In fact, for too long, Stockholm Syndrome has caused the veil to blind so many that we value the look of the veil more than we value our face when we look in the mirror. The veil has blinded so many, and if I were to tell you how to be liberated, that means that I value my own captivity and the oppressor who put me there more than I value you. If I were to tell you how to thrive, then that means that there was never a moment of being that you actually possessed that allowed me to know that you meant something to me. If I were to tell you how to love, then that would mean that I didn't value what God put inside of you. How can I love God if I don't love you? And how can I love you if I don't love God? More than that, we have been passed down a unique set of chains that has been protected in our minds like grandmama's china cabinet. Contrary to our ancestors, these chains are not physical, but they are everything else. But as a social scientist, I would be remiss not to mention this. Spiritually, the chains have taught us to love oppression and reject faith. Mentally, the chains have taught us to love dysfunction and reject healing. Emotionally, the chains have taught us to love anxiety and reject wellness. Financially, the chains have taught us to love monetary wealth and reject ourselves. At this moment, I want to emphasize that rejection does not always look like letting go, but it can also be holding on. Not just holding on with a weakened grip, but rather a grip held so tightly that your body begins to pulse to one beat. This can be displayed through holding on to biases, holding on to differences, but no. This brings me to Brother Dave Chappelle's point about the bushman and the baboon. When a bushman is lost and dehydrated in the wild, the bushman will create a salt trap by digging a hole and putting salt into it. When the baboon comes, it sticks its hand into the hole and grabs the salt without letting go, which makes its hand bigger. The bushman comes, traps the baboon in a cage, and gives the baboon all the salt that it can eat until the baboon is full. Once the baboon is full, the bushman opens the cage and sets the baboon free. The first place the baboon runs is the nearest body of water, and then the bushman follows him, and he is no longer dehydrated. The essential part of this story that needs to be recognized is not the bushman being able to quench his thirst, nor the baboon being greedy with salt, but instead the reluctance of the baboon letting go. Now, for us, this salt can be symbolic of many things in our everyday lives. It can represent a hatred that we hold, a fear we won't address, a passion we won't pursue, a love we won't allow to be fulfilled, a life we won't live, and a freedom we won't accept. But for us right now, liberation may not be what we wanted, but what is actually needed. Thriving for us means not cheating ourselves out of love and not taking it lightly. It means being living embodiments of the things that the world hates. How often can we recognize love as being healing rather than humiliation? How many brothers and sisters get the privilege to decompress in a space filled with love? The answer to both of these is not very many. So for this life we live in the 21st century as Black people, we have to recognize that our position is as beings and not as characters. For us to end this oppressive and repressive cycles, we need you. We need your Black abundance. We need your ambition. We need you, Morehouse. We need you, brothers. We need you, sisters. We need your success. We need your hearts. We need your tears. We need your love. We need your brilliance. We need your courage. We need your prosperity. We need your laughter. We need your resilience. We need your faith. And most importantly, we need you. Thank you.
Good morning, brothers. My name is Isaiah Stevens, a freshman philosophy major, business administration minor on the pre-law track from Ellenwood, Georgia. And the title of my oration is Men of Morehouse, Embracing the Invisible. In memorable and modern media, one of the most oft asked questions is, what do you see? In visual art, the difference between observing and seeing is that the former means to merely acknowledge the existence of something, whereas the latter means to engage with what one perceives. Now, liberation requires a deliberate redress of both structures and people that aim to repress and regress our communities. But the first requirement of Black liberation is re-evaluating who we see. Allow me to pose the question: how free is an invisible man? Nobody is born invisible, but it is a condition imposed by those who refuse to see the dignity of the individual. Now, invisibility is no fleeting concept in the context of freedom, because Ralph Ellison in The Invisible Man pens this lived experience, and I quote, "When they see me, they see my surroundings, themselves, or figments of their imagination, indeed everything and anything except me." But when men of Morehouse approach, we don't approach with materialism in our minds, but rather empathy in our hearts, because we understand this truth. Collective liberation is impossible unless we restore the dignity of those society has rendered invisible. Now, to do this, men of Morehouse must contend with men of materialism, whose proselytizers preach that they should wield intellectual ability only to pursue aspirations of avarice. Their materialism determines their moral frameworks, and many of them have become rich. But I'm here to tell you that none of them are thriving, because they didn't heed the words of Dr. King when he said that as long as poverty exists, no man can be totally rich even if he has $1 billion. Now, just as this society has done away with pennies, this nation has done away with those most reliant on them. But that is exactly why Dr. King said that the time has come for an all-out world war against poverty. The legacies of triumph that our people stand on rely on the shoulders of men of Morehouse, like Julian Bond advocating for civil rights in the 60s, Maynard Jackson opening up economic doors in the 70s, and even Senator Raphael Warnock today ensuring that the invisible remain seen. Now, this is no arbitrary concept, because, brothers, the hope is that in the 21st century, our weapons against injustice are stronger than ever. Now, the question is, what should we do about it? Now, I'm no military general like Genghis Khan, but I do propose that our war effort must take two forms. First, we must utilize the weapon of our time, social media, to highlight the stories of the marginalized, to give them a voice, give them a platform, and refuse to let them remain invisible. Their stories must be broadcasted, and they can no longer hide in the shadows any longer. And secondly, we must pull our funds together to support community programs. Frederick Douglass, in the narrative of his life, said that education means emancipation, so the deprivation thereof means oppression forevermore. Education means emancipation, so the deprivation thereof means oppression evermore. In the 21st century, prominence parades in the spotlight, while poverty pleads in the shadows. So the question before you today, brothers, is, will you observe or will you see? To observe, all you have to do is open your eyes. But to truly see, you must open your heart. Thank you.
My name is Milton Rogers. I am a senior Africana Studies major, religion minor from Roxborough, North Carolina. Oh, freedom. Those words were not written in comfort. They were sung by people who did not know if freedom would ever come in their lifetime, but still they had a belief that freedom was something worth calling for. Oh, freedom. It wasn't hopefulness, it was resistance. It was faith spoken out loud in a world that proved itself unfaithful. And every time we sing it, we are not just remembering the past, we're asking a question. What does freedom mean now? At this moment, black people, we are technically free, but we're sick and tired of being sick and tired, still negotiating our humanities, still learning how to survive in a system that expects us of our labor, but not our wholeness. The chains aren't always visible anymore, but the weight is far too familiar. And I know the weight personally, not just as something I've studied, but as something I've carried. I've known what it feels like to be celebrated for my strengths while my softness was ignored, to be affirmed for what I could produce while the parts of me that needed care were looked at as an inconvenience. And that's how I learned something very, very important. Survival can look like success and still not be freedom. So when we talk about thriving in this current climate, we cannot just talk about economic mobility or representation or visibility. We have to talk about spiritual liberation. Freedom today looks like black people finally being able to see ourselves clearly, without shame, without apology, and without needing permission. It looks like unlearning the lies that we were taught, that our bodies are a problem, that our joy is too loud, that our existence needs explanation. Somewhere along the way, we became experts at surviving spaces that were not even built for us. Between being where we were taught or what we live, being told our hair is too curly, our nose is too big, we're too light to be black enough, and we're too black to even be considered beautiful. But we learn to adapt, how to endure and how to be strong. But strength alone is not freedom. Spiritual liberation means we are not confusing survival with completeness, because survival comes from spiritualized and pain comes from normalized. And hear me clearly, oppression is not a calling. Burnout is not holiness. And pain, no matter how familiar, is not a proof of faith. For a lot of us black people today, faith is complicated. Not because we stopped believing, but because we have been used as a weapon as against us. Because love has been preached, but freedom remains conditional. People didn't lose God, they lost safety. That's why thriving today looks like spiritual spaces that heal instead of harm, worship that makes room for truth and devotion, stewardship and radiance, and it looks like believing in the impossible. A song written by Oscar Ellison asked, have you any rivers that you feel impossible? Any mountains that you feel too high to tunnel through? God specializes in the impossible, and in that belief, the freedom becomes real. Oh, freedom also looks like rest. That might sound simple, but for black people, rest has always been radical. We come from a history where our bodies have been treated like machines, so thriving looks like choosing rest without guilt, uplift without explanation, healing without being told we are weak for needing it. Jesus said he came that we might have life, and we have it abundantly, not barely, not constantly surviving, but abundantly. Because abundance is not excess, it's wholeness. So what does liberation and thriving look like for black people in the 21st century? It looks like being beloved. Survival can look like success and not be freedom. It can look like success and not be freedom. We look like a people who no longer are confused survival with freedom. People who sing "Oh Freedom" not only as a memory, but as a commitment. Oh, freedom is not on the horizon. Oh, it is a song in our hearts, the power in our steps, the life in our hands right now. So we do not wait for freedom, we walk in it. We do not hope for freedom, we hold on to it. And until freedom belongs to all of us, we will carry it, we will speak it, and we will live it without delay. Thank you.
Greetings. My name is Anwar Falah Abdul Kareem, a senior cinema, television, and emerging media studies major from Fairfax, Virginia. And these are arts of visual, spiritual, and lyrical intelligence. Give me liberty or give me death. Since Patrick Henry first spoke these fiery words inside St. John's Church of Richmond, Virginia, they have become a global battle cry. Such a phrase tells us that what lies opposite liberty on the scale of justice is heavier than one of life's only promises, other than taxes, of course. God tells us in Quran that every soul shall taste death. Our African ancestors who forcibly endured the Middle Passage jumped at the opportunity to do so, for they knew that death in liberty is greater than life in captivity. We Black Americans of the 21st century are in a new predicament. We cannot afford to jump ship. Those stolen Africans who reached mainland North America did not arrive empty-handed. With them, they brought the beliefs, traditions, and ideas that laid the foundation for this nation. Centuries of soot, poisoned by purge and cursed by colonialism, now rest upon our people's maternal morals. The only path to Black liberation in the 21st century follows our tangled roots back to our foundational family trees. Solidarity with Africa is just the tip of the iceberg. We were created in the image of a spiritual, expressive, and resilient people. The more we embrace these inherent traits, the freer we become. Liberation is a spiritual state. Belief in a higher power affirms that no living being owns us. That higher power shows us endless mercy with every moment we manage not to taste the foul bitterness of death. Therefore, it is imperative we show gratitude to the Creator by embracing the gifts we have been blessed with and using them to serve others. Look no further than Sheikh Ahmadou Bamba, the Senegalese Muslim leader who resisted 19th century French colonial rule with poems that encouraged his community to live like the Prophet Muhammad. Study the life of Oscar Micheaux, who wrote, directed, and produced over 40 films in the early 20th century, when cinema was still a propaganda tool for white supremacy. Micheaux portrayed the harsh realities of Black folk on screen, yet still made room for entertainment with scenes of romance and everyday life. His movies are a statement that Black people not only belong in media, but serve to educate the masses through it. Engulf yourselves in the writings of Paul Laurence Dunbar, whose parents were born in captivity, yet out of those troubled origins became a published writer at the age of 16. Dunbar captured the Black American experience with words that were nearly as honest as they were succinct. So whether through the cosmos like Bamba, the screen like Micheaux, or the pages like Dunbar, I implore you, find your purpose. Navigate for yourselves a path back to the motherland through that purpose. And remember, do not ask what the world needs. Ask what makes you come alive and go do it. Because what the world needs is people who have come alive. The world needs young Black men who have come alive until we all say, free at last, free at last. Thank God Almighty, we are free at last.
Good morning. My name is Demarion King. I'm a junior political science major, sociology, communication studies, double minor from Raleigh, North Carolina. Today, this oratory speech is called Liberation Requires the End of Dreaming. Standing behind a sacred pulpit in the backyard of President Lyndon B. Johnson stood a 33-year-old Dr. King, armed not with weapons, but with words powerful enough to convict the hearts of a nation. He told them very plainly that the journey for freedom would in fact be long and enduring, but they must remain faithful and aware that racism would not fix itself. In the 21st century, if Black America is to be liberated, we will have to trade comfort for discomfort, because freedom has never been convenient. I want to suggest that somewhere between 1968 and 2026, comfort replaced conviction because pleasures of capitalism have become cheaper than liberation. So while injustice runs rampant, here we are, starting to grow weary and falling asleep in this great revolution. Morehouse, I must ask, how are we falling asleep? How are we falling asleep as food deserts continue to plague the Black community? How are we falling asleep as voter suppression is in our very backyard? How are we falling asleep when ICE kills American citizens and dehumanizes immigrants? How are we falling asleep while a racist, unethical, miseducated, dead white man is honored in this sacred space while hardworking, black, powerful, and educated men and women are overlooked? Morehouse, how are we falling asleep? In the 21st century, black exhaustion is real and it is justified, but it should not paralyze us from our freedom. The urgency of now outweighs every person and system designed to keep us from experiencing justice. We are charged now with learning the history of our ancestors, reading the books of those who believed in liberation, and fully immersing ourselves in every classroom, no longer watching the clock, but transforming our minds through discussion and critical thinking. Liberation for Black America is an act of awakening our minds, bodies, and souls to the knowledge of our professors, elders, and yes, even our peers. But liberation does not stop at reading. It demands action. We must begin to speak truth to power, speaking against those who seek discord over harmony. For when we speak, Amos 5:24 is no longer scripture, but it is our reality. Let justice roll down like water and righteousness like an ever-flowing stream. I say this with full conviction. Liberation does not exist in comfort or ignorance, for both are enemies to freedom. So as the same way Jesus stood at the grave of Lazarus and told him to come forth, I stand here before men of Morehouse crying out to a generation of sleepy and weary people, telling you to wake up. Wake up for the unhoused who sleep in frigid temperatures. Wake up for those families being stripped of health care. Wake up for underinvested communities. Wake up for immigrants labeled as threats to white privilege. Wake up for your brother who can no longer afford college tuition. Wake up for liberty and justice for all. I dare somebody to tap your brother and say, wake up. The alarm for justice is ringing. The bell is tolling for leaders who will take a stand. The ground is shaking for voices bold enough who will speak peace amid chaos. So I finish in the words of Harold Melvin and the Blue Notes. Wake up, everybody. No more sleeping in bed. No more backward thinking. It's time for thinking ahead. Men of Morehouse, wake up.
Navion, stop playing with me. Good morning. I'm gonna get y'all out early today. My name is Lyndon Young. I am a senior philosophy major from Columbus, Ohio. And the title of my oration is Freedom by Way of Friends. In order to contemplate the concept of freedom, I must contend with all the times I felt captive. I was bound not only by a negative self-perception, but by what the world was telling me, foreclosing all of my possibilities because of who I am, where I am from, and what I look like. But I discovered I had a superpower that allowed me to run faster than society could label me. This superpower was my friendship. I came to find my freedom through my friends, and their love is what liberates me every day. But what does this have to do with you? Well, the prompt is, what does liberation and thriving look like for Black people in the 21st century? It is not the evils we face, but the friends we make that define our liberation. I believe that unity in the form of friendship is the guiding force that will liberate us all. As a philosophy major, I would be remiss if I did not give you a little conceptual background.
Aristotle, in his Nicomachean Ethics, details the concept of eudaimonia, also known as happiness or human thriving. For Aristotle, this is the greatest of human aims. Eudaimonia is not about living a good life, but about being able to say reflectively, I have lived well. The tricky part is that this cannot be attained without philia or friendship. You see, Aristotle knew what black people have continued to reaffirm. Our friendships are what have sustained our cultural consciousness and forced us to keep creating, calling us to tell stories of our fallen comrades, to speak truth to power, knowing one voice is buttressed by many others. Historically, our love for one another has kept us. But philia is a type of love that is briefly defined as a mutually reciprocated feeling of goodwill that is understood by all parties. In even shorter terms, it is wanting to see the best of someone who wants to see the same from you. It requires that someone takes your cares as their own, not because they are your family, but because they care unconditionally. They recognize something within you that they wish to see cultivated, not for their own sake, but for the beauty of it being made manifest within the world. Our friends are the ones who see us when the mask is off. They liberate us from society's demand to conform and hide ourselves. This is a different kind of love, but not every friendship is created equal. Those hip-hop griots, the Brooklyn trio known as Houdini, echo the Aristotelian notion of philia when they asked us, friends, how many of us have them? Friends, ones we can depend on. They were calling on us to take a profound inventory of the ones we surround ourselves with. It is not enough to have affection, for affection merely serves as the basis for association. Commitment is the badge worn by true friendship. Association is transactional, while friendship is transformational, and it is exactly this transformational quality that gives world-changing power to friendship. But just think, rooted in our school's tradition is the understanding that a weak man with friends is better than a strong man alone, because a man with friends is never weak. Our hymn says, true forever, to O more house may we be, so to bind each son the other into ties more brotherly. Our school charges us to build relationships that will change the world, move mountains, make ways plain, shatter ceilings, and bend the moral arc of the universe. John Donne wrote, no man is an island unto himself. Each is a piece of a continent, a part of the main. Each man's death diminishes me, for I am involved in mankind. Therefore, sin not to know for whom the bell tolls, it tolls for thee. At our entrance into this sacred brotherhood, we were given these words. We were told the bell tolls for us without being told what the call was for. John Donne called us to understand what Aristotle was thinking and what black people have always known, that to be human is to be in friendship. It is up to you to reinforce these bonds or float away. So to answer the question, liberation comes through breaking the chains of another, and thriving comes from finding others to share your life with. Friendship not only changes lives, but gives you one worth living. If I could leave you with just one message, be wary of trivializing the ties that bind one to another, for those might be the bonds that break your chains and set you free. Thank you.
Please, a round of applause for our orators. We indeed have a beautiful tradition of oratory at Morehouse College, and it has been my pleasure today to assist in this competition this year. The winners will be announced at next week's Crown Forum, and I trust that we will all be there waiting eagerly to find the results. There will be 3 places and 2 honorable mentions. So I hope that you've made note today of the competitors that you want to hear more from going forward. Thank you so very much for your time and attention. I'd like to ask that we all stand and sing the college hymn.
Sure, why not? Be on team, y'all.